My name is Danny Fenton and I'm an aeromodeller and an engineer. Join me on a fascinating journey where I show you some of the techniques used in scale aeromodelling. We're continuing the theme of the runners and the rails for the canopy. I've been doing a bit of research, and here is the rail as you've seen, and it needs to go in this position here, and it comes back only about 6 or 7 mil behind that line. Or behind this section here, and I've been doing a bit of research, and this picture's quite a telling picture, and it's of the Shuttleworth Trust's 671 chipmunk, and normally the Canadian ones would have the bubble canopy, but this one doesn't. This one has the UK type canopy, but the important thing is this section here. And I've been looking on lots of pictures to try and find a good shot of that. And this is the first one I found that really shows it very clearly. You can see that it ends halfway between the band and the back of the cockpit. And here's the back of the cockpit, and here's where the band would go. So it's halfway between there. So I'm doing it by eye. You can see it's sloping forward slightly, and you can see it's curved because you can look at the bottom line and see it's curved. So what I'm going to do, and I'm telling you now because this is going to be very noisy, and I'll turn the microphone off for this bit. What I'm going to use is the drum permagrit tool in the Dremel, or in the rotary tool, and I'm going to use it vertically, and I'm going to go in there, and I'm going to go along, and I'm going to keep going in deeper and deeper, and then I'm going to follow that top line, but still keep it vertical. And then when I get to the end here, I'm going to radius it out, and that'll give us an exit point at the bottom here. You'll see what I mean. So what I'm going to do is go in and chamfer it and radius it. You'll see. But that's how I think this is dealt with. But you only see this feature on the aircraft when the canopy is removed, which is very rare. But what you do see is when the canopy is shut, you see this small section peeking through behind the bottom of the canopy frame, and we need to get that right. So this is the next bit I'm going to look at. So there you see how easy that was to do. So what I'm going to do to close all this off is I'm going to use some 64th ply in there, and that should curve nicely and push in right along there. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to put some wood along the bottom there to act as a ledge for this along the bottom, and not just rely on the glue. Somehow. I'll lay in a piece of 8 square or something like that in there. I also need to put an anchor point for the the back of the rail. So what I'm going to do is put a hardwood block just in that corner for this rail to screw into, to clamp it. So we'll put the hardwood block in first, and then we'll put a piece of balsa in there, or one way around or the other, it doesn't really matter. This will do for the small block, so I'll just cut a 6mm 1/2 inch chunk off the end of that, and that gives us the block. And that will simply go in there. Some people would say you should be using epoxy for that. I don't find that I need the strength of epoxy. The strength of thick CA with a good close fitting joint is enough for me. I don't find epoxy is needed at all times. Right, now we need to add some balsa to the bottom of this to form the bottom edge of this curved section. So what I'll do is I'm just going to cut a length of 3/16, whatever this is. Right, now all we need to do is just to sand that bottom line, just to get curvature back. Right. We can probably carve some of this, keeping the blade vertical. All I'm using here is one of these little drum sander blocks, but I'm using it in my hand, just as I don't have to use the power tool. I sometimes find that using the power tool is a little bit too aggressive, and just using it in your hand is an easier way to be a little bit more gentle. But in this instance, because that's glass fibre on the outside, I'm going to have to use the power tool. And there we go. And I went down a bit too low, but never mind. That's the trouble with power tools, you see. So I'll dress that with a bit of filler, or even a little bit of balsa. How about that? Just make a piece that's more or less the right shape. Flood the area. Quick drop of that. And there you go. Repaired. Now let's find some fly. I'm going to use the grain vertically. And all I'm going to do is just push it into place and draw a line down the back. That's what we've tried to achieve, and this is how I've done it. We'll have to see whether or not the final effect is good enough. You can always fill in some of it and what have you, but I'm quite pleased with that. You can bring that back to there. It has a rather large block just here which stops the canopy going too far, and you'll see there's a round hole in the canopy frame, and you take this bung out, or you take the bung out to see the hole, and that hole allows you to remove this stopper, and the stopper is to stop the canopy going any further back than that point there, or the front of the canopy going any further than there. For maintenance, obviously you remove the stopper and then you can slide the canopy right back and in fact on this model you can take the canopy completely off, just slide it all the way back and then lift. I'm looking at fairings again. Seems to be the story of my life at the moment. There's not many more fairings to do. This is the section of fairing that runs along the top of the fuselage from the back of the rear cockpit to the beginning of that glass fibre fairing that we made for the fin and fuselage joint. So this is just simply going to be made from litho plate, and I'm using the thin litho plate for this. So that first one didn't go quite to plan. So it was getting more and more wrinkled and the folds were not in the right place. So what I ended up doing was using it as a pattern. So I've used that to create a template, and then I've transferred it to another piece, and then I've cut that out. And all I'm going to do now is just fold that lip and I got another idea. Let's try. I got these two lengths of steel plate some time ago from a friend, and let's try using that to create the fold line the same way I kind of did with the dapping blocks the other day. So I'm just going to place that right along that line, and then what can I use? I'm just going to use my finger to press it right on that line. Keep an eye on it, make sure it's not moving. Probably finger abuse, I probably have no fingerprints now, but what you have got to be careful is you don't cut yourself. Easily done. And there we have a fold along that line. That was actually a little bit easier, so I might adopt that method in future. Just going to try and increase the fold slightly without straying off the line. And there we've increased the fold a little bit. Going to try that on the model. So I'm not sure if this is going to work, and this is not how I was thinking of doing it, but we'll try it anyway. So what I've done is I've cut the litho plate to size. I should have polished it first and cut this off, but I haven't, so there we go. I've cut it to size using that other piece as a template that went wrong. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue it to the fuselage along the one edge, along that pencil line. And then I'm going to try and form the other edge on the model. Not how I'd like to do it, but it will actually mean that the edge will be perfect if it bends. So that's going to be the problem. So let's try and actually glue it to the model and see if at least that bit works. And as you can see, it's resisting my efforts already. I think it is gluing very well. Almost too well, because it's a little bit away from the line just there. So you can see that really is glued down good and solid. So I need to pull it in and get that line back on track. I don't know what's happened there. I tried to wipe any CA off that's got in the wrong place, because it's easier to wipe it off than it is to sand it off. And when I just tried to put the knife under there and actually break the joint, I couldn't. So I think that is actually a lot stronger than it looks. And I think part of the reason is the other side of this litho plate is actually cleaned and is bare metal. And CA and litho plate, when it's bare, really does work very well indeed. So what I've got to try and do now is replicate this area in here. So I'm going to just turn this flange over on the model. I'm actually going to do it with probably a piece of leather in my hand to stop me cutting my finger on that. Well, of course, it's gone missing, so I'm going to use I think this piece of foam, which is a sanding pad, just to protect my fingers from it as I try and bend it over. Let's see if it works. It's putting a crease in it, which is a good sign. Now we have the slight problem of how to get that to meet the line of the brass. So I think what I'm going to do, because it's pretty well down, I'm going to just use a sanding block in that channel and see if I can sand the litho plate to the brass. Let's try using the actual scalpel blade pushing downwards slightly to see if it will actually slice it. It is sort of working. Going back to sandpaper again. The reason I like sandpaper is it doesn't involve very much stress. You don't really deform things. And it sort of sneaks up on it. So I'm going to do it this way. As you can see, it's a little bit long-winded, but it is actually working. So once we've sanded all the way along there and cleaned up that edge, then I'll super glue that down onto the brass. Hopefully it'll hold. It doesn't have to be particularly strong, it's only aesthetic. The brass underneath is actually going to carry the load of the canopy. I glued down the top after sanding along the edge, and that's come up really well. So I'm just doing what I should have done right at the beginning, and that's cleaning the green or blue or whatever. I'm sure there's a proper colour, a name for that colour, but anyway, I'm just buffing the surface and getting rid of that ink or dye or whatever paint, whatever the surface is that's on it. You can paint over it, but I like to be back to the bare metal. And when you look at the full size, this area is pretty well shiny, well not shiny, but it's bare aluminium. So I was quite concerned that the channel was brass, and I didn't really want to be showing shiny brass colour, and I was going to just paint it. But this way I've now got the right aluminium colour without having to do any paint, and as it gets older it will just burnish quite nicely, I think, and weather nicely. So that's the top section done. Now I just need to do the sides and this lip where it's fastened down. So I'll keep on sanding and buffing, and I think to prove that how I've done it will work, I just need to get the other side to the same level. Say it quickly and it sounds easy, because as you've just seen, it takes a bit of trial and error, and sometimes you have to try lots of different ways, and sometimes you have to scrap what you've done and start again. It's just the way of it. Just the way of it. But I'm pleased with that. Looks good. So there's the finished side, and you can see it's nice and shiny, and it's aluminium, which is the finish I wanted. And it's gone out of focus again. Come back. And it's masking the brass rail quite nicely, which is lovely. So there we go. All I've got to do now is try and do the same thing on the other side. Fortunately, I drew round this before gluing it on. Amazingly, I was able to reproduce the same sort of result on the other side. The flange is a little bit thicker and the folding is a little bit crisper, but it's close enough to look great, I think. And I think I've replicated what is on the full size just nicely. I need to sort out what's going on at the front here yet. I haven't quite figured that all out, but there's plenty of time for that. So that's that bit done. I think the next thing I'm going to look at is sorting out the wing roots, because there's a bit of a gap between the wing and the fuselage at the fairing point, and I think what I'm going to do is concentrate on that next. Okay, so if you've enjoyed all this messing around with brass and litho, then please click like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.